These are the final shots of our $1 million ski commercial we filmed with helicopters and a crew of 20 people. Except none of that is actually true. Because with just a couple of friends, using camera gear we trusted with our lives, we faced avalanche danger, the subway police made us delete our footage, and there's also one moment I wasn't planning to show you. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly how we created shots like this, how we even filmed some scenes on just a phone, and how I used color grading, along with many more techniques we discovered on this journey through Japan. Okay, since we unfortunately didn't actually have $1 million budget, we needed a plan that would save us even if everything went wrong. And so 2 weeks before leaving to Japan, I planned out the entire vision I had for this ski film by using reference frames from some of my favorite films and commercials. But before I show you how we attempted to film all of these other shots on the city streets of Tokyo, let's first focus on the most challenging ski shots, for which brands would usually have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for helicopters, expensive equipment, and for a large crew with camera operators, who, by the way, have to be extremely skilled at skiing. However, I only had a Sony FX3, a couple of lenses, and a dusty drone I hadn't updated in years. And to make things worse, I can't even remember the last time I myself went skiing.
Are you confident in your skill?
But I wasn't gonna let any of that stop me, because making this ski commercial was actually part of a much bigger dream. At the end of last year, I came to a realization. After years of doing back-to-back client work, chasing one job after the next, working on projects I had dreamed of doing, the thing that had once kept me up all night with excitement now kept me awake for all the wrong reasons. Until I realized it was time for a fresh start. And so together with one of my best friends called Mos, we started building, working on the vision of starting our own creative agency. But to make that dream a reality, we still needed our very first agency production, and so we spent weeks cold outreaching to hundreds of brands, creating custom outreach videos.
Hi Jack, hi Felix, hi Barbara, hi Ashley, hi Victoria.
Doing our absolute best to convince someone of our vision. But the few brands that did reply all said the same thing. And since the snow window in Japan was quickly closing, we decided to take a pretty big risk. And so Mos and I scraped together every cent of our savings to set out on a journey to create a ski commercial in Japan that we could use as our first piece of portfolio work, just about crazy enough that it would capture the attention of the brands we'd only dreamed of working with. And once we had found 3 other talented filmmakers that offered to help us out on our first agency production,
6 days before we're actually going,
we finally booked our flights to Japan, and this now marked the beginning of our very own creative agency and filmmaking academy called Outline. With which we want to create work for some of the sickest brands in the world.
see you in Japan.
Time to go on an adventure. Woo! In some of the craziest places, while sharing every step of the creative process with you. But just after we met with the whole team for the first time in Tokyo, we were quickly reminded of the challenges we were still about to face.
I was talking to my guide today. Yeah, he's a little bit worried because there's a scale of 1 to 5 in avalanche danger. 5 is like, it's gonna be an avalanche. It's 3 currently.
This is Jazz, and without him, this entire production wouldn't have even been possible, because next to being an incredible filmmaker, Jazz also speaks Japanese.
Hi.
And because avalanches pose a serious risk, Jazz reached out to an expert local guide and a professional skier to help us survive the challenging mountain conditions. One thing I hadn't anticipated is that it's fucking snowing. It's snowing a lot, which means that the gears you can see is already getting a little bit wet. However, due to the pretty intense weather conditions that day, the pre-production plans we had carefully come up with were pretty much useless.
We underestimated literally everything.
So we've got to hope for the best.
And after we headed down the mountain for our second run,
There? Okay.
and we did our absolute best to adjust the plan.
We want to feel the urgency and energy of the character.
That's when disaster struck.
Bro, I hit a tree. My ski hit a tree and clicked off.
One of my skis, it hit a branch, clicked off, and I smashed straight into a tree.
It doesn't look too good, bro.
My leg's killing me.
And that's when I realized that all of the time, money, and effort we'd spent might have all been for nothing. But there was one person that wasn't going to give up so easily. This is Erwan, and not only is this guy a legit skier, but he's also an ex-space engineer, an extremely talented filmmaker, and one of those creatives with absolutely infinite energy.
So what's the plan, Ray?
So the boys are gonna send it up without me. There's not much I can do. It's gonna be difficult.
We're leaving Mr. Director behind.
It's a new way to direct, like it's Wi-Fi directing.
Everyone is setting up the FX3.
But even though the team gave everything they had, and Erwan Wi-Fi directed like a champ,
So let's do the whole run doing this.
because of the extreme weather conditions,
Oh fuck.
it had been impossible to get the shots that we needed.
A little bit more snow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but like it's not in focus.
We now only had one more day left to capture all of the ski shots that we were still missing. Our Japanese guide was now annoyed and worried for our safety. The entire team was exhausted. And to make things even worse,
He still doesn't know how the conditions are going to be and how stable the snow is.
Avalanche risk high.
Hi.
白馬
4.
は全部
however, on that first evening together, something changed. And for the first time on our trip, we made an effort to just slow down and to really just spend some time together as friends. And not only did we share stories and a bunch of incredible Japanese food, but I also finally had the chance to properly walk everyone through my exact vision for this anomaly film.
This in the blue will be fast and the grey will be slow.
And despite all of the hardships of that day, it seemed like the team was now finally on the same page. And it was time to give this dream of ours one more shot.
1, 2, ready, kick it.
By some miracle, the avalanche risk had completely cleared up the next day, and everyone was in high spirits.
Come on, let's go!
The first shot we had to focus on was inspired by this incredible film shot by the director Ben. This shot might usually require a helicopter to film on the empty mountain slopes from a high angle. However, since I could still barely move, it was time to get a little bit creative.
So we're using walkie-talkies to communicate between the different teams. We have the skier and guide up there. Erwan is shooting from here, and then we have Ray hiding somewhere right there with the drone.
Fantastic team, let's get this absolutely perfect. Let's go. Okay, finally it feels like I have some control over the situation again, because I've got my drone at least in the air.
The story of our film was about our main character who was trying to stand out from the crowd, and I envisioned a lot of different versions of the skier to be flying down the mountain at the same time, followed by a hard cut to just one skier to reinforce the main message of the final tagline. With my drone, I simply filmed a static shot of one single ski round down the untouched open mountain slope. I then made sure to leave some extra space in the frame so I could later crop in. Then once I was back in the editing room, I simply masked out the skier's trail and copy-pasted it 5 times over, and what started as just an idea was now a reality. To achieve this beautiful high contrast look, I used a Kodak 2383 power grade workflow in combination with my Hong Kong Blue secret sauce LUT. I also brought out even more contrast in the image by applying masks to dark and specific parts of the mountain, which is a technique that I also used on a lot of the other ski shots because it really makes your image come to life. The next shot we needed to get was for the climax of our final film.
And we're heading to the snow park now, where we're gonna see if we can get some amazing kind of rotating shots from underneath.
And what inspired me for this frame was this incredible commercial called Chroma. And this shot had that exact feeling of freedom that I knew would be perfect for our film. However, getting a shot like this proved to be a lot harder than we had originally thought.
Because we have to nail the exact moment that Masa's in the air. You have to synchronize it with the pan of the camera. Oh, watch out.
Holy fuck. Oh my.
But since we were finally in flow, it kind of felt like anything was possible. I set my FX3 to slow motion and I cranked up my shutter speed all the way past my usual setting.
Okay, Masa, you can go. Go, go, go.
If I moved my camera quickly enough to just catch our skier Masa flying through the air, I could then, in post, slow down my shot even further past 120 frames per second using optical flow. And because I'd set my shutter speed a lot higher than usual, my motion blur still looked natural.
Holy shit.
We got it.
And while I sent my drone into the air once more to capture some
Extra shots in between. Some frames with a little bit of depth, maybe some shadows, maybe like a play between light and dark.
one member of the team who I haven't introduced yet was meanwhile making herself familiar with the customs of Japan.
Behold, the boys are like... I'm just drinking milk as the boys are
What the fuck?
return to home, doing their own thing.
All jokes aside though, Jana is actually a super talented filmmaker from California who was one of the Outline community members that volunteered to help us out. And she also happens to be one of the kindest people that I've ever met, although she may or may not have slightly overestimated her snowboarding abilities.
I thought we were going backcountry skiing today, Jana.
I don't know what we're doing.
And while Erwan and Jazz sent it down the open mountain face once more,
I'm gonna switch the gimbal on.
to capture, honestly, some of the craziest shots I'd ever seen.
I'm gonna trust the autofocus.
This one's great too.
Daichi, our safety guide, he actually turned out to be a camera operator too.
3, 2, 1, drop.
He even ended up nailing the first reference shots, which we failed to capture on day one. On some shots, I decided to just break the rules completely and crop in by 200 and sometimes even 300%. Some shots I also played in reverse to increase that feeling of stress.
Yes, bro, that's amazing.
And at this point, I even realized that the shots that Erwan had captured in the snowstorm were still able to be saved by using this black and white inversion trick. I simply duplicated my original clip
and then set the blend mode of the top clip to difference. I then adjusted the contrast a little bit and took out all of the saturation, and despite the slightly out of focus skier,
this shot actually ended up being the opening frame of the main film.
Conformity. An invisible force that only exists.
It's such a relief. And oh my god.
It felt like there had suddenly been a massive weight lifted off my shoulders.
If Mos and I had done this shoot alone, we would have been, to put it politely, absolutely fucked. So that's why a good team's important.
There you go.
The first part of the shoot is a wrap.
Let's go! We killed it! Yes! And by the way, if you want to experiment with color grading some of these shots yourself, you can download some of my favorite frames from this film for free in the link down below on the Outline website, where we'll also be publishing a bunch more exciting stuff very soon. However, this was no time to get comfortable because we still needed to film more than 80% of the shots for the final film.
and we were gonna have to capture these frames in some of the busiest areas of Tokyo.
And we now had just 2.5 days left before it was already time to leave Japan.
I think it's officially time to leave the beautiful mountains behind and to properly explore the city of Tokyo.
And so, after a long drive back to Tokyo, we ate some more incredible food.
Food.
Wow.
Found an outfit for Jazz to wear in our film, booked a last-minute discounted film studio online,
And then finally arrived at our Airbnb in Tokyo.
Finally made it.
Casual. 9 hours of driving today.
Pretty good.
Once we woke up the next morning, after another pretty short night of sleep,
The next shot we focused on was inspired by this frame because it perfectly evokes that feeling of mystery. And to put our own spin on this reference, we needed a very specific type of material.
So that the outline of our character is like very blurry.
Yeah, no, this is perfect.
Is there a little?
Yes.
This one's a bit more blurry.
How do you plan to put this in the car right now?
We'll make it work. We'll put it like on our head.
once we had arrived at the studio,
I opened up my Milanote inspiration board and instantly got some more ideas for compositing and framing my shots. I often build these Milanote boards in advance so that I have a collection of reference images that I can then later during the shoot use as fuel for my creative process.
I'm just testing out some different lighting styles. So some backlight, side lighting, top lighting.
And so I switched up the lighting to a more mysterious top-down look to achieve that feeling of mystery. Since this shot still felt a little bit too flat, I decided to switch things up and simply focus the light on the background so that our foreground subject would be in total darkness.
and even though we spent some precious time on experimenting with these shots,
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
most of them unfortunately didn't actually make the final cut.
I imagined our second studio shot as a cutaway frame that I could use to create a feeling of speed and adrenaline. I set the background lights to a cooler color, while the foreground lights were set to a slightly warmer color temperature.
Yeah! Oh my god.
And this is actually a technique I also use a lot for my talking head shots. First, I lower my camera's color temperature so that the background appears slightly colder and bluish. I then make sure to match my warmer key light, the one which is shining on my face, to the same color temperature as my camera. And now my face really stands out from the background because we've created color contrast. For some of the shots, I set my camera to a very low shutter speed, and I then started moving it from side to side to create this feeling of urgency and speed.
And yeah, give me some movement.
And what was key here was to start out with big movements that then kind of got smaller and that then got bigger again, which gave me that contrast of movement between big movements and small movements that just flowed way better once I was in the edit. The final studio shot we needed was also technically the most difficult one. I wanted this shot to feel like we were inside of the skier's POV, like you're in the action yourself. But with time running out and with no budget left to rent a macro lens, the only solution we could come up with was to use the 15mm wide lens of my iPhone 15 Pro to recreate that exact feeling of the shot I had imagined. And as Erwan carefully removed the visor of the goggles, we placed the iPhone inside of them.
Okay.
Maybe like this.
And synced the shake of the phone with the movements of the lights and reflector.
I color graded these black and white shots by first converting my Apple log footage to a Rec 709 color space.
I also made sure to lift my black points a little bit while crushing my white points.
And a really useful technique was to increase the density of my colors, which really pulled out a lot more detail in the skin tones. I actually also used this color density trick on some of the other studio shots because it creates this beautiful cinematic look with just a simple slider.
Along with adding some halation,
some film grain and dust, and to finish it off, I added just a little bit of my Hong Kong blue secret sauce LUT.
Dude, that was exactly what it
Oh, holy shit!
That's exactly the vision.
However, we now still had 3 very important subway shots to capture.
And usually big productions would rent out an entire subway station for something like this. But since we now had less than 0 budget left for filming permits, we decided to wing it. And so we headed down into Shinjuku, the busiest underground subway station on the planet. Since we'd carefully rehearsed a brilliant plan the night before.
So someone walks past, you switch, now you're there, standing there, like...
It finally felt like we had some more control.
We're fucked.
Okay, you know what? Let's try.
But after wandering around for almost 3 hours trying to find the right location, in between this confusing maze of platforms and tunnels,
There are these barriers between these gates. That means that we can't really see what's inside of the trains.
we then finally came across a spot that seemed like it could work.
This just might be the platform.
And so the first subway shot that we needed was inspired by this frame from a music video. And I loved how the subway created this dynamic foreground movement while the subject stood stationary in the background. I wanted to take this shot a step further though. Our character was trying to fight the conformity and the sameness of the world around him. So I wanted him to appear for just a split second in between the subway windows.
And then there's like a quick transition to our other guy
to make it look almost like a glitch in the system.
So used to this now, man. This is our life. I could live like this.
But if you're anything like me, at this point, you might be asking yourself, how the hell do you even come up with ideas like this in the first place? Well, people love to say that every great piece of art starts with a blank canvas. But honestly, that's never really been true for me. Every idea I've ever had, good or bad, was born from something else. A song I couldn't stop listening to, a movie scene I couldn't get out of my head, or a late night conversation with a friend. And whenever I come across something that inspires me or really sparks one of those ideas, I put it straight into my Milanote board, inside of this ever-growing archive of inspiration, and this board is really where every single project of mine truly begins. For this ski film, the core idea actually came from a single frame that I spotted on an eyewear website months earlier, which was the frame that kind of unlocked everything else. I then added in a few poems and a couple of songs that I liked, and a crucial part of this bigger vision was choosing the right piece of music for this film, which I oftentimes do before I even start with my edit. But because we still did not have any budget left for a composer or for a custom soundtrack, I chose to mix together 3 or 4 different songs, 3 of which were actually in the same musical key. So that means that I can take different elements from those different songs that I like. You can very easily mix them together. From one song I took this intro piece, and then I switched to another song. Together it sounds. I then let those moments in the music breathe. I then fill that silence with sound effects that reflect what we're seeing in the image. And right before the final climax, I stacked everything. Layers of sound, fast cuts, color contrast between the black and white shots, all building up towards...
As a pulse emerges that refuses to sink.
And even though I hadn't edited the full version of my film yet, and I didn't really know the final storyline, because of the way in which Milanote lets me visually map everything out, suddenly the entire feeling of the film started to shape itself. This is exactly what Milanote helps me do, because bit by bit I drop in my references, my colors, my sounds, my poems, and every little bit that inspires me, and then it's just about connecting all of the different ideas and putting my own twist on those concepts, and suddenly the story starts to reveal itself. And because it's all super visual and intuitive, that chaos in my head turns into structure pretty quickly. And while I was designing the treatment, writing the shot list, and building a last-minute storyboard, Mos handled the logistics, the crew coordination, and every other tiny technical detail. And day by day, hour by hour, every little detail lived inside of this slightly complex network of production boards. And if you want to try Milanote for yourself, you can do so for free with no time limits. So just check out the link in my description down below. However, even with the perfect plan, things never go exactly as you expect them to. We still needed to capture the last subway shots. I wanted our character to appear inside of the subway, wearing both his business suit and, in the next frame, his ski suit. And then we would transition between those two versions as someone walked past the lens. The only problem was that the timing was nearly impossible.
We have to wait for it to be exactly in the middle. Come on. Okay, let's move to the next one.
The doors opened and closed too fast.
Go, go, go.
Plus, we didn't have any control over the people that were in the subway, and this frame just didn't feel right. It wasn't really working. And because we quickly ran out of time for the final subway shot, we made a last-minute call to come back the next evening on our last and final day in Tokyo. When we woke up the next morning, after barely sleeping again, I think we could all feel the pressure, because the entire team was flying back home the next day.
Ray, are you too stressed to talk?
I'm okay.
The shots that we wanted to capture at Shibuya Crossing, they were supposed to carry the entire tone of our film. And once again, big productions would usually spend tens of thousands on renting out an entire street or location or film studio for scenes like this, along with 40 to 50 extras that they would also have to pay. But we had none of that. And if our Shibuya shots didn't work, the entire structure of our ski commercial would fall apart. But the second I hit record, I knew that something was wrong. The light was flat, the colors were too dull, and trying to film in between 1,000 tourists was basically an impossible task.
Sorry!
And it's proving very difficult to find the focus and to keep the same distance, to not be killed by cars.
We kept reshooting and adjusting the plan, and we got something, but nothing that we captured at Shibuya really fit the vision.
Not perfect, but
After hours of pushing through, we had to stop because it was time to head back to the subway, hoping that this part would finally be smooth. We met with some of Jazz's friends that we had to cancel on the night before. We went over our plan until we were ready to capture the frame that had kickstarted this entire project. And for the first time all day, it felt like we actually had a little bit of momentum. We finally started getting some shots that I felt quite good about, and the vision that I had in my head, it started to come together.
A bit more over the top. This was very good, but a bit more like...
And while Mos and Erwan dressed in full ski gear, again...
Erwan is a bit warm, he's getting help from the crew.
And walked past the actors while they stared in disbelief. I even punched in my camera with a quick manual zoom to draw the viewer's eye straight into that moment.
Okay, killed it, guys.
And right as we were about to wrap this scene, a group of Japanese police officers surrounded us. First, they respectfully questioned us, but then made us delete all of the footage that we had captured that night in the subway.
How are you feeling?
We'd spent our last 2 days in Japan, and to be honest, most of it looked pretty clean and technically correct. And yeah, we did actually manage to recover some of the subway shots that we had captured on one of the SD cards, but those alone weren't going to carry the rest of our film. What we had shot that day just didn't come close to what I had envisioned in my mind. Maybe it was time to just accept the fact that this film just wasn't going to look the way that I had imagined it to look. Not with our schedule, and especially not with our budget. So the next morning, Erwan left early to fly back to France, and we sadly said goodbye to Jana too.
I don't want to say goodbye.
And the team had honestly been incredible. Erwan with his infinite energy.
honestly, it blows my mind.
Jana with her infinite smiles. Jazz with his calm confidence. And of course Mos with his fearless optimism.
You just have to take risks.
At this point, it was just time to let it go and to be grateful for all of the shots that we did manage to capture. And so we left it at that.
The end.
But honestly, fuck that. We didn't come all this way just to give up here, and I certainly did not limp through the mountains just to walk away defeated. And so Mos and I, we both maxed out our credit cards, and we delayed our flights by just a few more days. Even if it was just the two of us, Outland's first agency production wasn't dying here.
Last day of the shoot. Just Mos and me.
I'm fully geared up again.
And that's exactly when something changed.
Ray, what's going on?
Man, we finally were in a flow. I've been waiting for this spark for everything to come together and the perfect location to match and the lighting to be good, and now finally we've got it. And we're not supposed to be shooting anymore actually, but it's here.
It was needed.
Yes, let's go real quick.
Up until this point, I was still somewhat operating like I did back when I was shooting projects for real clients, with shot lists, strict structure, and complex storyboards. But when the team left that day, I stopped following the rules and I just started chasing whatever shots made my heart jump. And suddenly, I just became the kid who picked up a camera out of pure curiosity.
Time to go.
And the moment that I leaned into that feeling, we finally managed to capture the black and white shots, which perfectly visualized that 9-to-5 depression which I'd been missing. And I just started noticing all of these little gifts of the universe, as I like to call them.
Flower shots could be sick too.
Light and shadows and intricate details and interesting characters that crossed our paths.
Yeah, it's gonna be so cool. Yeah.
and I used all of those little details to support the intricate world of the story that we'd come up with.
It shapes the way we move and washes color into grey. But as time breaks and sound stretches, reality begins to echo.
I also suddenly remembered a random in-between shot, which we'd previously filmed in the studio. So I dragged our friend Jazz into the streets one more time, and I matched his movement and framing to our studio shot, so that once I was back in the edit, I could seamlessly cut those two worlds together. And for the final beat of the commercial, I stumbled across this revolving office door. I set up my FX3 on a tripod, and I used a longer focal length to compress the scene, while I asked Jazz in his business outfit and Mos in his ski suit to both walk out of the revolving office door. All it took back in my edit was just a few masked layers, a simple crop, along with a little bit of my secret sauce to pull out those deep blues as our character stepped into this new version of himself. Once I dived into the edit, the script for my voiceover, which I'd been secretly writing throughout the entire journey, that also suddenly just clicked. In the end, I did write about 12 different versions of it, but with every version, I unlocked a new sentence or a new play on words, which then evolved to the final version of the voiceover. I recorded it with just my phone and a sock that I kind of put over the microphone, and the color returns to a monochrome world. It works. But I wanted something more unique that would kind of take on this role as if it was a new character in the film itself. So I ran my voice recording through an 11 Labs voice warper, just enough to change my voice without losing the real emotion of my own recording. As a pulse emerges that refuses to sink.
As a pulse emerges that refuses to sink.
A fracture in the perfect mold.
A fracture in the perfect mold.
We then actually screened a first version of this edit at Sam Newton's Film Festival here in Bali.
It whispers, it nods, it echoes.
And getting some feedback in person was super valuable, which even led to me making 2 entirely different versions of this edit just to discover what was possible. And if you want, you can actually watch that first version on our Outline website, which we just launched and which we've been working on for months. And if you'd also like to see a little bit more of how we're actually building Outline and what tools we're using behind the scenes, then you can go and check out Inside Outline, which is a new YouTube channel we've created, for which we've got a ton of super exciting stuff lined up. And even though I just recently made the switch from Final Cut Pro to DaVinci Resolve for my editing process too, I still fully edited this commercial within Final Cut Pro, and I then exported a 10-bit ProRes file to DaVinci Resolve, where I used scene detect cuts to cut up the entire clip, and then to color grade and finish off with some texture and text and everything else. If you're asking yourself, why are they calling this a commercial and not just a spec ad? Well, that's because just 3 days before shooting, the brand Smith Optics, they reached out last minute to support us by sending us some of their equipment.
Wow, that was really nice.
That's right.
However, once the film was eventually ready, they unfortunately never got back to us. When we finally uploaded Anomaly, version 25, we honestly didn't think much of it. But then the next morning after we uploaded it, it had 35,000 views. And to my surprise, it didn't stop there. The comments and honestly incredibly kind messages, they just started rolling in. Creators even started reacting to the actual commercial itself.
Oh my god. What did I just watch? What the f?
And on one afternoon, while Mos and I were filing our Outline company taxes, an unexpected email notification suddenly popped up. If anything, this should be a testament to the fact that you don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need a giant crew and $1 million budget, and you definitely don't need an AI bot to create your films for you. And honestly, this entire trip wasn't really about Japan or about making a ski commercial. This project is about chasing that spark that you feel when you come up with an idea. That spark you feel when things just start to click. We could have quit at any point when we were up on that mountain, and we could have quit during the Shibuya scenes when everything went wrong, but every time something didn't work out, we just kept on pushing. I don't know, the team just believed in the vision and everyone just held the line. And that is really the beginning of this thing that we've been building, this thing that we're calling Outline.
Halfway through and then open it up. Yeah.
So I hope that this in some way, shape or form inspires you to pick up a paintbrush or to pick up an instrument or to pick up your camera and to go out there and to chase a spark.
Grab the tools that you have laying at home, even if it's an iPhone, and just make something that you're proud of. And keep iterating on that, keep getting better, just make sure that you're evolving, you're not standing still.
Next to Outline Agency, we've also been building something which we're calling Outline Academy. And just to be clear, this isn't your usual online course. We want to take an entirely different approach. And once you're part of the Outline Academy, you'll be able to choose exactly what part of the creative process you want us to break down. So if you want a color grading breakdown of this anomaly film, for example, and you want to see the exact LUTs and workflows and techniques that we used to bring the final look of this film to life, or if Jessica wants a deep dive into the sound workflow on my Ferrari film, or if you want a pre-production workflow with all of the templates that we used of this BTS video, then you'll be able to request that through the voting system that we've created. So every little breakdown we release is something that the community genuinely wants to learn. And for the most dedicated Outline Academy members, there will even be opportunities for you to join us on our actual shoots so that we can learn and grow together while actually making real productions. So trust me when I say that my absence over this last year of not really sharing much, it has been for good reason. And yeah, we've got a couple projects lined up for these next coming months that when I was a little kid, I could have only dreamed of doing. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the entire team. I think that concludes the first chapter of Outline. Peace!
Boom.